Hi there, and welcome back to the Garden of Epiphany, a women's health and wellness oasis. I'm your host, Raven Epiphany, and I'm so glad you decided to join us for another week. Last week, we talked about mental health. Through the video, I shared 5 things I didn't expect to experience throughout my healing journey and my mental health journey. And I also shared a blog that outlined 5 things that you can start doing today, small things you can implement to help improve your mental health journey. I wanted to spend this week circling back to one of those points and really just emphasizing the importance of minding your intake. So we are in a world that is super overstimulated. Like, you are getting things thrown at you, everything from social media to the news to commercials to advertisements to, everything else, the actual interactions you have with people, etc. We listen to music, we eat food, etc. There's so many things that, we are consciously and unconsciously taking in every single day. And a really big part of minding your mental health is to be mindful of those things that you are taking in. Now, we are not able to control every single thing that comes across, our eyes, our ears, etc. Sometimes you may see things as you are out that, you did not mean to see, or that you weren't expecting to see, or you may hear things that you were not expecting to hear. But it is important, one, to do your best to be intentional about the things that you are actually, intentionally watching and intentionally listening to. And then it's also important to be mindful of how you are handling the information that you take in, whether you took it in consciously or unconsciously. So in the blog, I talked about a couple of different points of intake that we may or may not be mindful of, that we can be a little bit more intentional with. And that includes social media, that includes our music, it includes TV, the news, and lastly, our food, which is a little bit different than the others. And so when it comes to those things, first, it is important to note that what you are taking in can definitely affect your mood. And so that's an immediate thing that you can focus on. How did this one thing that I just saw or that I just heard affect the way that I feel in this given moment? If you are noticing that it doesn't make you feel great, then maybe that's something that you need to take in and, consider switching up or guarding yourself from. And then also another thing that these things can affect is just your overall mindset about certain things. Like, when we compare ourselves today and all the things that we take in to maybe people who got their information back in the day by only having to read a newspaper or only by word of mouth, or, without all of this stimulation all around them, I would bet that they had a lot more space to think their own thoughts and decide, how they thought or felt about things in an easier, more quiet way, right? And I believe that we still owe it to ourselves to give ourselves as much of that type of space as we can. And so what that looks like is, one, choosing times to just unplug. That means you're not on social media, you're not watching TV, you're not listening to a podcast or music or anything else. You're just unplugged to sit with your own thoughts. Another thing you can do is be mindful of how something that you're watching, listening to, etc. may actually influence your beliefs, influence your mindsets, influence the way that you think about things. So let's say that you are on a journey of trying to change your mindset about something. You really want to think about how the things that you're watching are therefore either adding to or taking away from you building that positive mindset. And sometimes, without being conscious about it, you can find yourself shifting in ways that, are so slight that you don't realize it until over time, it's been a long time, and that these things have culminated into a complete personality change or a complete mindset change. And again, if these are positive things, that can be a good thing. But if these are things that really don't suit who you are as a person, or really do not suit the direction that you're trying to go in, you can realize that you've done subtle damage over time that you now have to sit and undo. And so let me give you an example. So I used the example in the blog last week that if you are someone who is trying to learn to trust others, for example, you may not want to tap into things that are consistently talking about how people are untrustworthy, or, talking about betrayal or displaying this betrayal. I use the example of, reality TV shows. They're always talking about some friendship breakup. They're always talking about someone cheating, etc. you may think these things are innocent, and maybe for some people that they are. They can tap into it and tap right out, and it doesn't matter. But if you are literally trying to change your mindset about relationships with others, friendships, etc., then, seeing these things may subconsciously, prove the points of the reasons why you originally did not trust others, right? And so what that looks like is being a lot more intentional about what you're watching. It means that, though everybody else is watching one show, you may not be able to watch it. It means that maybe you should be tailoring your music to, things that are geared towards what you want to see from yourself, and not, towards the things that you are trying to get away from. Another example that I used was with my music. I know I went through a time of trying to increase my confidence in myself, increase, my body positivity, etc. with myself. And so one thing that I intentionally did was I stopped listening to music that was misogynistic towards women, or, had super negative perspectives towards women, because again, those are those things that seem innocent in the moment, but what's really happening, especially if you're listening to something over and over again, is really shifting your mindset bit by bit by bit over time, until you are far away from that goal that you had for yourself. And then lastly, I would say, even if you don't necessarily have a goal for yourself, it can be very hard to just remain as an individual if you are consistently taking in everyone's opinions, everyone's thoughts, everyone's, hot take on what's going on in the world, right? So you owe it to yourself to, again, sit with yourself sometime and just think, what does, insert your name here, think about a given thing? What do I feel about this? How do I want to govern my life, in general, if I wasn't tapped into this social media person, or if I wasn't tapped into these videos or these TV shows, etc.? I know for me, I've heard a lot of people talk about unsolicited advice. And one thing that we don't realize is that because we live in such a stimulated world, there is literally no way to not take in quote unquote unsolicited advice. You are getting it whether or not you want it throughout your day, through, again, advertisements, through TV, through whatever you're tapping into, social media, even through interactions with others. You are getting it whether that person's coming up to you and saying, you should do this. Subconsciously, these things are telling you that. And so what's more important than trying to, tell other people not to share things with you, it's to really internally create a system for how you will filter through these things. So again, first you want to start with trying to avoid certain things that, do not go in line with what you are trying to shift your mindset to. But the second thing is, again, there's going to be certain things that you just cannot help. And so it's really important to build a filtration system within yourself where you take advice or thoughts or, points of reference, and you filter them through and ask yourself, does this fit with who I am? Does this fit with who I want to be? Does this fit with the things that I believe in? And if not, you can say, thanks for the advice, or, whatever, thanks for, I'm cool beans that I saw this one thing, but that's not something that I'm going to choose to put in my toolbox or keep in the back of my mind as something that's useful for me. And again, this can vary from person to person. Someone could be giving the wisest advice, it's very wise counsel, it's very, smart, it's educated, they've done their research, etc., but it may not be the thing for you. And so I've noticed a lot on social media, for example, or even like YouTube and things like that, podcasts, etc., which can be wonderful tools, that these people are speaking from their own perspectives. And maybe some people are speaking from perspectives of those that they've worked with, which can be, again, a wonderful thing. They can definitely be informative, they can definitely be helpful, but it is still important, even in those, aspects, to be the own expert in your own life. So those people may be experts on, whatever it is that they're speaking on, and it's okay to tap into those things, but use your own filtration system to decide, what works for you. Just like we talked about with going to the doctor, where, you should be working with your doctor, but you are essentially the expert on your own body. Same approach should be used with everything that you're intaking. Like, yes, these people may be speaking from an educated place, they may be speaking something that may be wise for someone else, but it is still up to you to be the expert on your own body, your own mind, your own mindset, your own goals, etc., to decide whether or not whatever is being said is something that you want to accept into your own life. And so lastly, I will talk about things like the news and food. The news, we already know in today's world, the news tends not to be very great. That can definitely be a mood killer. And I know that there is this, for some people, there is this urge to want to be informed at all times. But at a certain point, we have to accept that some of these things we cannot control, and therefore if they are not contributing to us having a positive mood, or if more importantly they are, you know, bringing our mood down in a regular place, we have to sit with ourselves and kind of be honest about whether or not we need to intake all of these things, and whether or not it is actually fruitful for us to be informed about so many things in the world. I often think about, you know, again, comparing us today to people in previous, you know, years where, you know, maybe they heard about things that were going on in their city or in their country. Now we have access to things that are happening all around the world at all times. And I don't know about you, but that does not sound very healthy to me for us to be carrying the things of the whole world at all times. So it's very important to, yes, you may be informed. Yes, you know, you want to be empathetic to the things that other people are experiencing, but that does not necessarily mean that you need to intake every detail of every single story of every single thing that is happening in the world. That is not good for your mental health, right? Now, on the other side, we talked a lot about blocking things out that are not good for you, but you can also be intentional about your intake by thinking about what foods you are putting into your body. That is another form of intake that is not often, you know, in general terms, thought about when it comes to our mental health. So with your foods, you want to, you know, start observing what foods, you know, give you energy, what foods drain your energy, what foods put you in a good mood, what foods make you more emotional or, you know, put you in bad moods. And maybe, you know, for women, especially when your hormones are shifting, maybe these foods are different across the month, or maybe these foods are different based on the type of work you have to do in a given day. But start being mindful of the food that you're taking in. Start trying to eat more cleanly, because your gut health is definitely connected to your mental health. They are not separate. The things that you put into your body affect things like hormones, affect things like, you know, the bacteria in your body, which can then affect, you know, how you think about things, how you go about your life, etc. They can affect it in a good way, you know, by giving you energy, by putting you in a good mood, by, you know, pushing you forward. Or they can affect you in a negative way by draining your energy, by putting you in a bad mood, by, you know, increasing your anxiety or your susceptibility to depression, etc. So in summary, just be more mindful of the things that you are taking in, and know that your journey is your own. So just because, you know, one person may be able to watch all of the trash TV in the world and it not affect them in any way, does not necessarily mean that'll be the same for you. And when it comes to, you know, taking in advice and, you know, things like podcasts, YouTube videos, etc., which can be wonderful tools, it is still up to you to filter through those things to know what is the actual good advice for you, and that is good advice for you in the season that you are in. And so I hope this helped you to just be a little bit more mindful of these things. Of course, it will be a journey for you to figure out what those things are for you. But the first step is to start thinking about what you're actually taking in. It's kind of like metacognition. Think about what you're thinking about. Think about, you know, the thoughts that certain things are putting into your mind, and then decide if those are good things for you to carry out. So this is the end of the video. I hope that this helped you along your mental health journey. If it did, leave me a comment. If there's other things that you are deciding to be more mindful of, please do share it with us. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do so. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and join us back here next Wednesday. Have a wonderful rest of the week.